Hi everyone, welcome. I'm here with my dear friend Yolande. Yolande is someone who's been with us at HTM from the beginning as a real light of support and care. And I'm just so honored to be with you today and chat just about your perspectives on what's happening with the mountain, how to support Māori culture and healing, and really the definition of restoration in relationship to this issue, but what's true in your heart. So welcome, welcome, my dear.
Tēnā koe.
So tell us a little bit about you.
Well, tuatahi tēnei te mihi ki a koutou katoa, ki rangi nui e tuhi o nei, kia Papatūānuku e tākato nei, me ngā mea, me ngā tini taonga kei wainga nui, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou, tēnā koutou katoa. Kia ora, Sama. Thank you very much for your warm welcome, and to everybody who has an interest in not just our rākau, but our whenua and our world. That's my interest. That's why I stand strong and opposed to the removal of any of our ancestral trees, any of our trees. I believe that all our rākau and everything on this earth has a whakapapa, and I will fiercely defend the right for our maunga to remain intact as a beacon for our manu, our ngangara, all the life that it sustains.
Thank you. I love that. I was so moved by when you said that all the trees have a whakapapa. That's a conversation I've had personally with a really lovely individual from the TMA. One day we were just, on the mountain and had an exchange, and I said, he said very sincerely from his heart, our trees whakapapa back. And I said, yes, but so does the eucalyptus, so does the macrocarpa, so does the jacaranda. They all whakapapa back to different indigenous peoples, and it's really warming my heart. I've shared with you, I'm indigenous on both sides. To me, it feels like there's an invitation on this beautiful maunga to really heal fractures that are forming that feel capitalist in origin and not rooted in indigenosity. Is there anything around that?
Yeah, on the subject of indigeneity, I want to go, first I do need to acknowledge ko Ngāpuhi te iwi. So my roots are I am not indigenous to Tāmaki Makaurau. I am indigenous to Aotearoa, but not to Tāmaki Makaurau, but I was born in the shadow of Ōwairaka. I was raised there, and I still play on Ōwairaka, as do my tamariki. So at what point does one claim mana whenua? And colonisation interrupted that ability. And by residency, people can claim that. Now, I hear so much talk about this not being about an environmental, we spoke about that, Sama, an environmental restoration, but a cultural restoration to the people. And I've got a few pretty strong thoughts, but they are personal thoughts, and I don't mean to attack at any of the rights to sovereignty that this issue raises. I think we need to continue that conversation, and that is a conversation that is an important conversation for Māori to continue to have, and for us all as a nation to have. But this planet is under stress, and that is an issue for everyone. Indigenous people have been leading the charge on that for a long time. People weren't listening. Now, the idea that tupuna maunga authority has been established, I understand a lot of people shy away from standing up and saying I'm opposed to this because of our conflicting feelings about the sovereignty issues and the issues of restitution vis-a-vis the treaty, Te Tiriti o Waitangi. My personal opinion is that tupuna maunga authority, I'm not going to get involved in the rights and wrongs of what they're doing, but for me, it seems that the council, I do not, as a Māori person born and raised in Tāmaki Makaurau, I do not see them as the mana whenua who has my interests at heart. I don't see it that way. I believe that there is an agenda that the council has to find people to partner with, to call them mana whenua, and that by having that conversation with mana and saying, well, we've consulted, it justifies them, and then it takes the heat off them to be able to say, well, we've honoured the treaty and we're going to go forward with this agenda. It begs belief, or beggars belief, that the government is sitting there saying, you know, we're going to have a climate resolution and people have got to get out of their cars and start using cycleways. And we're going to cut down the giant trees that we all know as one of the steps that you can take to help with our climate control. So I have really conflicted opinions. So I do understand why it's difficult for people to stand up and say this is wrong, because we, especially as Māori, we want to be seen to show support. But my take on that also is that until the government concedes that there needs to be partnership at leadership level with Māori, that it's not just about obliged stewardship, that actually there's a power base here that needs to be addressed and restored for Māori. This is not a way to address that. It actually leads to more division amongst Māori Pākehā relationships from my experience.
Wow, yes, thank you. Thank you for naming all of that. And you know, I mean, we've been together in this process since 2019, and you know, running social media for HTM, it's been a real process of having to constantly come back to the heart, watching the things people throw at each other and really seeing like something being cleaved apart over this issue and it undoing such goodness that was already there. And just as you said, beggars belief. It's not just on the Maunga themselves, but it's around, it's going like, how can you talk about a climate emergency and then take away tree protection? They're literally your first line of defense against global warming. And so I'm hearing two things here. I'm hearing a deep acknowledgement of putting Papatūānuku first, absolutely at the center, because how do you restore the sovereignty of Indigenous people while their land is in tears? Like, how do you do it? I had that experience in my fatherland. You know, a lot of power was given back to the tribes, but then they used it in a capitalistic way and trashed the water and trashed the desert, and it will never be what it was. And the soul of the people broke. You know, they're not the same people anymore. And so, you know, just I'm nothing to do with this on that level of identity, but to see it again, it's like part of me screams and just says, please don't do it this way. And so hearing you speak this is such a healing for me.
There's so much that we still can learn from each other. You know, I heard people up the Maunga saying, oh, they're planting harakeke, blimmin' harakeke. Harakeke is an excellent filtration plant that can absorb so much carbon. So is the mighty oak. And some of our trees are carbon neutral, including some of our native trees. The wild cherry, as beautiful as they are, however, they feed our manu. And our manu, we have, it's touted as an urban forest up on Ōwairaka. How lucky are we in Tāmaki Makaurau that we can look around and see these beautiful trees, but they are being levelled at such an incredible pace. And it saddens me that tupuna maunga authorities stand in front and the argument is gone down to that issue, when the issue is actually what's behind that is cutting down the trees and who's enabling that. There needs to be a redress of the Resource Management Act. This should not be happening. And, you know, I hear what you're saying, Sama, about the commercialisation of our taonga. You know, to talk about restoration of the mauri of the maunga and then gating our maunga up and charging people for them. Those sorts of things are some of the issues that are making people suspicious about motivations. I see ecological tourism in that. I see the benefits, I do. But I think we need to be much braver as a people and understand that the planet needs us. And We need the planet. If we don't take care of it, we are doing our grandchildren the gravest disservice.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, some estimates is that, you know, this generation of young people under 18 could be the last to see a full human lifespan if things
Yes.
go at this rate.
And it actually, it breaks my heart. And the other thing, what you were saying about other Indigenous, you know, those trees belong to other Indigenous cultures. I know this is not something that Māori people in Tupuna Maunga Authority are obliged to hear, and I understand that, but some of those gum trees up there are endangered in Australia. And I had an Aboriginal professor come to Australia, and he, when I took him up there, he actually stopped and he did his offerings to the trees and said, "Can ask me, please come and visit my ancestors for me," because he hadn't seen trees like that back in his own country for decades. Now, we have an obligation to honour the whakapapa of those trees if we are to honour our role as kaitiaki.
Yeah, wow, I just got chills hearing you say that. Um, you know, it's similar for me, the Palestinian olives. I know some of them are very elderly now, but you know, growing up in the Middle East and just understanding how much has been obliterated in the occupation of Palestine and how those groves were just taken out and go like that maunga is an ark.
Yes.
It's a living, breathing ark, and it can teach us more about coexisting as a people, which to my mind feels like the number one ingredient to our survival as a species. And so we're in this incredible situation where we can choose what's right in our bones, and then that will only lift Indigenous people up.
Yes.
Or we can, and this is, I'm going to say it and I want to say it with sensitivity. One of the things that's been the hardest for me observing this so closely is a sense that indigenosity is getting used for corporate gain.
Yes.
And that actually makes me feel quite sick.
Mm.
And, you know, if you can speak to that in any way, if you have a comment on that, because you know better than anyone how to frame that.
For me, it's just a sign of the neo-capitalist liberal world that we're living in. I also believe that people will only do what they're enabled to do. And we are only enabled because a government has an agenda. And as Indigenous people, that's quite difficult because we have been marginalised from our resources for so long. So I can see how it can happen that you feel that this is an opportunity to regain some ground. But what from the ashes can sometimes rise a phoenix, right? What I believe is coming from this is a new paradigm that people are starting to see our connections, not our differences. And that is something that we can all start to work towards. It's not, I've seen people up at Ōwairaka helping with the plantings. It's not that people are opposed, it's that people are opposed to how. So we need to sit back down at the table and talk about how, and understand that, you know, council appointed representatives of iwi, they don't represent the voice of Papatūānuku, and that's who I stand for.
Me too.
Yay!
Thank you, Yo. Is there any parting thought or anything you feel is really important to close this with?
Oh, my only thoughts are to say thank you to brothers and sisters around the world who link arms to protect our ancestors. The trees are our ancestors. The birds and the insects are our ancestors. We've been here for a dot on this planet, and we've made some pretty bad mistakes. We have lessons to learn from the trees and the birds, and it might sound mundane to people, but for me, it's in my whakapapa to be the guardian of those creatures and those trees. So thank you to everybody. Tēnei te mihi ki a koutou katoa, mauri ora.
Thank you, Yo.